welcome to SUGATA and Friends. We're gonna have a few friends joining us through these screens here. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Skype for hosting this session. It'll be great to hear an update from SUGATA and the work that's been happening with the school in the cloud over the last year. I'm, by the way, Sandy Spiker. I lead our work in education at IDEO, the design and innovation company. Excited to reintroduce you to Sugata Mitra. So, as many of you know, Sugata is a professor at Newcastle University, and he's spent more than a decade looking at the way that children learn. His tireless research, conducted in both the rural slums of India all the way into the schools in the UK, have inspired the idea for the School in the Cloud, which is a groundbreaking global experiment in self-organized learning. And that experiment has been unfolding under our eyes for the past year, actually since the TED Prize last year. Over the last few months, 5 virtual labs have opened across India and the UK, is that right?
Yes.
And you have more in the pipeline?
Yeah, well, the target was 7, and so 5 of them are done.
Excellent.
2 more to go.
2 more to come.
Yeah.
And then also this week you're launching the technology-based platform for School in the Cloud, is that right?
Yes, that's right, and that platform's getting launched this week, yes.
Excellent. Well, why don't we start by just hearing you talk about what the future of learning that you're creating for today's learners is. And maybe you can do that by just giving us a sense of what is a typical day like for a learner?
Sure. Actually, the way it's panning out, the experiment itself is kind of split into 2 parts. There's the Indian part, and then there's the British part. And within the Indian part, there are actually there is another split, which is rural and remote versus urban poor to urban middle class. And then we jump straight to middle class England. Mm-hmm. So the big question, will it all work the same way, or will there be big, huge differences between how these schools in the cloud function? So it's obviously too early to tell now, and that's going to be the main aim of the measurement. But the answer to your question, what does a day look like? They look a bit different, first of all. I'll try and describe the difference. This is, of course, just the observation from the first few days and weeks. So if you take England, one of the schools where the School in the Cloud is actually housed is called George Stephenson High School. And what the teacher did there, Amy Dickinson, was that she appointed a committee of 12-year-olds. And before building the actual structure, she asked them what should it look like, and she called me. So I said, look, this is what I want to do. It's about self-organized learning. What do you think the space should look like? So the children actually drew designs of what that space ought to look like. And the designs were, that's some very interesting things in the design. I haven't been able to implement everything, but just to give you a flavor of the kind of design that they did, they wanted a black ceiling. So I said, a black ceiling? So it should be black. So I said, why should it be a black ceiling? Said, their answer was because it won't look like a ceiling, it will look like the night sky. It will look as though it's open. I hadn't really thought of a ceiling that you could, make it appear open. So they wanted that and several other things. So then we opened the lab on 23rd of November, and they started to have sessions. Now, what's a session like? So a teacher, let's say a teacher's, the curriculum says, teach them about the American Civil War. That's, a curricular topic. So she, instead of doing the usual thing, which is going into a classroom and saying, the American Civil War happened, blah, 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 and so on, what she does is she takes them to the School in the Cloud and says, I wonder what happened in the American Civil War. Why is it such a big deal, and why is it in the curriculum? And the children sort of try to answer those questions. So that's the broad outline of the method. Now, what actually happened was that I had expected a kind of a lukewarm reaction to start with, but it wasn't. It was a heavy-duty usage by teachers of all subjects. Mainly because when you ask the teachers, they said, well, it's just too good to be true. I mean, I just pose the question and sit back and our work gets done. The committee, but what I didn't realize was that the committee was observing all this very carefully instead of being inside their own classes. So they would observe each session, and the last time I heard from them, they had told Amy about their mathematics teacher and said, she came and she was teaching inside the school in the cloud, so she shouldn't have been doing that. Now, would you like to tell her or shall we? So I have to go back and find out what happened next. So that's typically what's happening there. Now let's jump to the other end, to Korakati, West Bengal. Now that's where if you think of the map of India, that's where the Ganges meets the sea, where it breaks up into literally tens of thousands of tributaries. And the tributaries actually change depending on the time of the year. So there might be a tributary somewhere one day, and the next day there isn't. There's land instead, and the tributaries move somewhere else. So it's kind of very weird landscape. There's no electricity, there's no Medicare, there are no schools. In that particular part of the Sundarbans that I decided to build the school in, it was humongously difficult to actually build it. So I had to build this glass and brick structure, solar powered. The cost of transporting the glass was more by about 100% over the price of the glass itself. So my budgets just went through the roof. I had no clue that this is what was going to happen. But anyway, we got it up and running. We put in 6 kilowatts of solar power, and then we let the children in. And now these are children who, unlike the George Stephenson children, this is, remember, the other end of the spectrum, they have only seen computers on television. They've never touched one before. But then I knew from the hole-in-the-wall experiments what would happen. The only thing I didn't expect was, and this might be of interest to you, we know from the 1999 experiments that if you give children a computer who have never seen a computer before, they learn how to use it. That I've said many times in my talks and everything. And that it takes them a couple of hours to figure it out. 2014, that time has shrunk. You know what it's shrunk to? 7 minutes.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's because of TV or because of the fact that they've seen people working on a TV, even though they've never touched it. So I have filmed, Jerry has filmed this. Yeah. You see these screens with the School in the Cloud logo on the screen, and I'm thinking to myself, this is going to remain just the way it is for a long, long time while they figure out what's what. But 7 minutes later, there's a game on every screen.
And Sugata, are the kids in these schools learning in the same way? The teacher comes in and helps ask a big question, and they're then pursuing it?
In Korakati, there are no teachers. So what I have is a local supervisor who I've briefly sort of briefed him about what the method is. It's obviously very strange to him, but he just supervises. So where are the questions going to come from? The questions are going to come from the granny cloud. So in Korakati, the first day, after they'd gotten the games in, we brought in a granny. It took them a while to realize that it's not a video playing, but there's a real person there who's actually reacting to them. They first thought it was a video, then they thought it was a robot, and then only the third and last option was, no, she's human and she's somewhere. So that was quite hilarious. She started off with an English lesson. They have absolutely no English, zero. So she started off with, something about the wheels of the bus go round and round or whatever it is. And so she's going on and on with all of this. And there's a kid who sort of looks up at me. So I said, why are you looking at me in Bengali? I said, why are you looking at me? He says to me in Bengali, why does she keep repeating that the wheels of the bus go round and round? So I mean, I'm keeping my fingers and toes crossed. Is it going to be English in 7 minutes also? Yeah. I don't know. But I've never seen, in education we think of years and months. That's our mindset is that way. Yeah. This is minutes. Is this what we are looking at now?
We actually reached out to some of the students in India from a different part of the country in Pune, and they actually had some questions for you. So I thought we could queue up the Skype video message from 3 girls in Pune, and they have some questions for you, Sugata.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Shireen from NEHS, Panchgani, India, and I wanted to ask you, how did you become a professor?
Oh.
Hi, my name is Mansi. I am from NEHS, Panjini, India. I wanted to ask you that how was your education? Hi, I am Driti from NEHS, Panjani, India. I wanted to ask you how did you build a school in the cloud and did you really build a school in the cloud?
What
So
was the last
I'll
part?
repeat these questions. Actually, what I'd
Yeah,
love is for you
okay.
to take the first two questions. What was your education like, and how did you become a professor?
Right.
So they're very curious about your background, and I'm guessing that part of that has to do with how did your learning experience shape the learning experiences you're creating?
Yeah, well, I've been kind of asked this question by children in many different forms. So when I was hearing her, I was remembering the same question when I first went to Newcastle. And what I used to do in those days was that my colleagues told me that don't go into the metro late in the evening and stay away from young men with spiky hair. Okay, so the first thing I did was I got into the metro at 11 o'clock at night and went up to a group of kids with spiky hair and asked them why I was told this. So I said, guys, I've just joined this university, and they said, so they said, well, we don't know anything about that, sir. So they were really very polite and they were nice kids. So it's just that they want to dress like that because they want to attract a little attention to themselves and they want to make a little noise so that everybody notices them and so on. So I was quite friendly with them. They asked me, so what do you use? I said, I'm a professor at the university. And one of them thought about it and said, you had to work really hard to become a professor at the university. But you would have earned the same if you had driven a bus. I thought I should tell my vice chancellor.
Is that your
this.
next TED prize? Is the SUGATA Mitra bus?
The bus driver. Yeah. So anyway, so her question about how did I become a professor, well, I had no intentions of becoming a professor. So all I was doing was trying to answer questions, and I was with a private sector company, and my job was to do product development. But then I had just come out of a research institution with a PhD, so whenever I would develop something, I would also publish it, which the company didn't like because they said, what about IPR? I said, what about it? We'll make a better one by the time they copy this one. So I kept publishing. And because I kept publishing, then I started getting more academic jobs. And then I kept publishing some more. And then I just became a professor. So it isn't a big deal, I can tell you that.
Well, it sounds like, though, that question asking is a core part of your way of relating in the world and has helped you learn a lot. So
Yes,
it seems like that got baked into your framework for learning.
Absolutely, and I guess it's, I didn't suspect at that time that asking questions can replace a curriculum, which is what the School in the Clouds is trying to do.
This video makes me ask the question. I know we're showing those students that are from a different part of India, but especially the part that you're talking about where these children have never seen computers before or been on the internet. How do you see that what the School in the Cloud is about will change the life opportunity for people around the world? Especially girls, I think, in India.
That's what this whole study is going to be about. So, first of all, those kids that you saw just now, I've been to their school. And what might not be obvious to you, believe it or not, is about a year ago, they could not speak English at all. They were stumbling with their English. But they've been interacting with several of the Skype grannies. And I'm just amazed at where those grannies
they're
are taking.
Very articulate.
They're fluent. So that's amazing. So anyhow, so that school's urban, lower middle class India.
Yeah.
So I would expect that they will go more or less the same way as George Stephenson goes or Newton Ayckhoff goes, except for a little bit of difference in the English because, English is not their mother tongue.
Yeah.
But what will happen in Korakati? We don't know at all. We have absolutely no idea. I have a research team, and my biggest concern at this point is that in spite of their trying their best, they are not able to avoid a hypothesis.
Yeah.
The hypothesis is, a soul session can't happen in Korakati for at least a year because, their English has to... I don't know that. So I'm going to do this the moment I get back from here, back into India, is to go to Korakati, ask them a question in English, and leave them alone for some time. I have yet to encounter any children anywhere who, after half an hour or an hour, would have said, we haven't found out anything. If I haven't encountered them for 14 years, I don't think I'm going to in the Ganges Delta either.
All right, we have another video message, and this time it's not a question for you, but it's actually some students who are sharing with us what they love about being part of the self-organized learning environment. And I believe this is from Mr. Jameson's class.
I think that Soul has allowed us to work and cooperate with other people, and that we can learn how to work with other people and not just work with your friends. And that we get to explore the world and figure out new things and while we're using Soul. I think it kind of allows you to be more free with your learning instead of always reading textbooks, and you also get to work with new people, and it gives you a lot of advantages in your education.
I think it's cool because you get to work with partners and make more friends than you usually do, and you kind of develop more teamworking skills. It's kind of cool being on our own without Mr. J always teaching us. So, yeah.
That's very well.
So, yeah, first of all, I just want to point out, did you hear the girl say corroborate?
Yes,
I was going to say.
yeah.
That was impressive.
Well, that's. I just want to add one little story to that, which is a similar little girl from London.
Yeah.
I had just finished a Soul with 7-year-olds, and there was a humongous amount of noise. You know,
Yeah.
Souls are very noisy, so there's this huge amount of noise. And then and I had to stop the teachers from, saying, shh, be quiet. And I said, no, don't do that, because that will spoil the Soul. So they let this happen, and they got to some nice, fascinating answers, as they always do. And then I was interviewing some of the children and asking them. So I asked one of these little girls, I asked her, did you like it? Oh yeah, I love it. I love doing Souls. So what do you like about it? And you know what she says? She says, I like the noise. So I said, you like the noise? I can't hear myself think because of that noise. How can you like that noise? And she said, in her own childlike way, it's a very deep comment. She said, when I hear the voices of my friends, I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That's actually a psychological statement, So her threat perception goes down, and all the neuroscience we know tells us that when threat perception goes down, learning goes up. So what a beautiful explanation, just to hear the voices of her friends.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It breaks a whole lot of old stereotypes that we have. The first stereotype in a classroom, be quiet.
Yeah. It also, that video in particular seems to really hit on something that kids always express, which is that they want to actually be working with their friends.
Yeah, that's what she's
And a lot of
saying.
the conversation about the future of learning emphasizes technology. We see a lot of images of kids on laptops or kids working alone on tablets. But it seems to me that what you've been doing is really emphasizing the social in the dynamic.
Absolutely. Well, you need to have the basic connectivity.
Yeah.
You need to have a big screen. A big screen because of geometric reasons. If you have 4 or 5 kids, then it's just uncomfortable for them to look at a little screen. So give them a big screen. But given those two things, the thing that they really need is each other.
It seems like we have time for one more video clip. So let's hear Julia.
My name's Julia, and I'm from North New Hampshire. I believe education needs to be something kids look forward to every single day. Too often do we wake up and dread the day that lies ahead of us, taking boring quizzes, sitting through classes that don't interest us, and just not doing anything worthwhile. I'd much rather spend my time doing something I'm genuinely interested in. And I've already taken the steps to do that by joining a program that takes students' interests and forms a curriculum around it. For example, I want to be a pastry chef. And so I'll be able to learn a lot about baking and even work with other professional pastry chefs to learn how to open a bakery and how to just make great food.
So, what this makes me wonder is in your question-based framing where you're asking kids to go online and find information and construct knowledge together, how does that connect in a way to that real-world learning that I think a lot of students are craving?
Yeah, well, it depends on how you frame your questions.
Yeah.
So, questions don't necessarily have to be only about scientific stuff out of their curriculum. A question could be, how do you find, how do you buy shoes from eBay? What's the most efficient way to do it? These are life skills that these kids are going to need, but they're not in the curriculum. So, and the other example is for buying a tablet phone. Anyone who's over 40 years old, in order to buy a tablet phone, has to go and ask someone who's about 9 or 10 because they don't understand the specs.
So one more. We'll squeeze one more in. We have a teacher who's sent us a video message with a question for you, SUGATA.
So my question is, I am a public school teacher who has spent the last 6 years trying to change the way that public school works and what we spend our time and focus our energies on, to little or no avail outside of my tiny little world of my classroom. And that's for such a limited amount of time. How are you actually going to make those things happen in public education so that the majority of people can be educated in that manner instead of the manner we've been doing for so long?
So I'm
Well,
guessing you
I'm
get this question all the time. This is
Oh,
really about
absolutely.
integrating in the system.
It is at the heart of the whole issue.
Yeah.
And it got touched upon yesterday in the Bill and Melinda Gates discussion, actually.
Yeah.
But, there's a very, very simple answer to this question. The entire education system is driven by our methods of assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So as a parent, you have no choice, because you know there's going to be that examination at the end that's going to determine everything. So no matter how badly you detest the existing system, you have no choice but to put your children through it. So making a change in the education system involves simply one step, changing the assessment system. But it's easier said than done, because the assessment system is more than 200 years old. And what the assessment system is from an age where you needed to know a lot of stuff in your own head. Which is why, we are still taught multiplication tables and things like that, because only calculating device you had was your own brain. So if a bureaucrat somewhere in some government takes that decision and changes, maybe experimentally changes even one of the exams into a group-based, different format, conceptual, internet-enabled examination, just once, that would be the beginning of the end of the old system.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you, SUGATA, for joining us for this session, and thank you all for watching. Please come back later and check out all the other sessions that are available. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.